All right, so welcome back in. Today we're going to be diving into Bitcoin and Ethereum. We'll also take a look at a couple of altcoins that seem to be holding their own in what is a little bit of a correction, or is it? Is this a head fake? We're going to take a look at it. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. Evan Aldo is in the house today, and we're going to dive into this. Yep. It's going to be fun, Evan. As always, we like to get kind of the TA side of things.
There's a lot of great things in the charts right now.
Yeah, it's looking good. And I think a lot of people they get a little bit startled anytime Bitcoin does see any kind of 4 to 8% correction. Yep. It seems like those are the windows that everybody is like, whoa, wait a minute. But there is some things happening in the news that is causing a little bit of FUD. And just to dispel, I think, some of this, because this, again, I look at it, more of a glasses half full approach. This first story here, firms with custody services must add crypto assets as liabilities. This, of course, is under the U.S. SEC rulings trying to go in this direction. And really what Gensler and the SEC is saying here is that securing crypto assets and the associated key information is really kind of the aspect of now looking at being able to essentially go with secure custody against those crypto assets and including those as liabilities on the balance sheet, which is a little bit of an angle that I think a lot of people have been really kind of leaning into for the potential of regulation kind of flowing into this. And you look at this tweet here, what he's talking about, if crypto is going to be widely adopted, it needs some rules of the road. And then, of course, to enforce them, he's talking about the SEC. To be clear, he's tech neutral. And what I'm not neutral about, of course, is investor protection. Even though I do see this as a little bit, posturing and maybe grandstanding to a certain extent. I think right now the SEC is getting their hiney handed to them on the XRP and Ripple case. And I also see that there's been a ton of pushback from the regulatory and governance bodies, especially around the political landscape. So I anticipate that this is more of the SEC simply trying to save face and get in a position of putting some regulation in, which I still believe is the path to a $20 trillion market when you look at where Bitcoin is going. The other thing I wanted to touch on before we get into the charts today is this one right here. Bitcoin drops to the 45.5 as Europe votes to ban the cold wallet in an attack on decentralization. Just so you guys understand what's happening in Europe, this is a little bit concerning, but at the same time, I look at it this way, is that this is really just keeping the honest people honest. And for it to be an attack on anti-money laundering and AML requirements and KYC requirements, I don't necessarily see this changing out much, other than it will affect some of the DeFi applications. But I think for the most part, anybody that's doing things on the up and up is going to win. Still, the biggest problem with AML issues is still going to be fiat. Fiat clearly dwarfs what's happening in Bitcoin or all of crypto in general. But essentially, according to their terminology, an unhosted wallet is a non-custodial wallet managed entirely by an individual. This includes such wallets as Ledgers, Trezor, SafePal, etc., MetaMask, Trust Wallet, etc. So these essentially, the only way you'd be able to utilize these is being able to plug into a KYC exchange. So if you're plugging into an FTX or Crypto.com or those types of platforms and utilizing a hard or cold wallet, that is the only way that you'd be able to utilize these in the new European guidelines. And the guy that's really kind of not really fostering this, but definitely pushing the envelope on this is a guy by the name of Paul Tang. Paul Tang is a member of the European Parliament, the PVAD group, and he's the chair of the Committee on Tax Matters. So this is really about where the Parliament position is. And if you look at this tweet stream right here, this is kind of what he's talking about. So another week, another social media storm by crypto bros. Now about the transfer of funds regulation. That's what we're talking about. Just like bank transfers, transferring crypto like Bitcoin should be accompanied with information about the person sending and receiving the funds. And I think this is going to probably happen on a global standpoint. The question is, how is this going to affect DeFi? And is this really going to affect Bitcoin? In my opinion, I think this just goes back to the fact that it's governing the people that already are playing by the rules. And if we're trying to catch the bad guys, it's like, why do you move the cheese? If you're going to catch the bad guys, you keep the cheese in the same place, you keep them coming back to the trough, and then you snag them. So I think the UK and what's happening there may be a little bit of overblown situations. They kind of talk about it here. I would just go to his Twitter account. You can take a look at this tweet stream. He really kind of gets into the whole aspect, but cryptos are extremely mobile and operate in a borderless world. This means that funds from unhosted wallets often come from unknown sources, and money going into unhosted wallets may end up in the wrong place. Example, he's talking about with issues like that. So you can kind of see their concern. I get it. I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that we need regulation. The point that it starts to put restrictions on the common person to be able to change their financial future, that's where I draw the line. Because at that point right now, crypto has been an opportunity to pretty much unify the opportunity for the average guy to go out and actually do something with his savings, his investments, and maybe get a chance to get a step up. So that's the only thing that really kind of concerns me. Evan, let's jump over to Bitcoin.
Yeah, so
Lots happening.
It looks like we've dodged kind of a major bullet on our monthly time frame right here, because what I've been worried about on the 18 is kind of a repeat of the 2018 bear market. And if you look right here in Market Cipher, this is our VWAP, this yellow line right here. It was a few days, past few weeks, at the same level it was in October of 2018 before we crashed another 50% to our bear market bottom. However, what's happened is it's come up very close to the zero line.
Yeah.
When it crosses the zero line, we're going to print a green dot, which is a very strong buy signal. And the last time this happened, we pumped about 130%. So there is a strong case here to really make new all-time highs in the next few months. Now, people are concerned about the little pullback. It's not too bad in my opinion. I think it's a pretty healthy pullback. You could see the red dot on the 2-day here on Market Cipher. We had a bunch of red dots on the way up. They're all about 5% corrections, just like we saw. And if you look at the money flow here, it looks very similar to how it was in August of 2021. And we're coming up. There's some good curvature here. It looks like we can repeat this, and I think there's a good shot we will come up about 135% in the next couple months. And where would that bring us to? It's a big number. It's a good number. Let's see here. 135% would bring us right around 80K, 130%. 80K is a really big area. Now, a lot of people probably want to know what's going to happen in the more shorter term, and we could look at some of our lower time frames to see what's going to happen here. So right in our 4-hour, and you can see the green dot in the 4-hour, strong buy signal. Yeah. And the green dot below it, a very strong buy signal. And the fact that we bounced very nicely off of this Fibonacci level right here, just a nice bounce upward, that's a strong indication that this is just a healthy correction. Now, where could we end up in the next month? I'm looking at around this general area, about 60K, this pocket of around 60K by the end of April. And we can look at some of our really low time frames too. You're coming into the red on the hourly. The last time this happened, look back here, we pumped up about, let's see what it was in the last couple weeks ago, about 18%. So if we pump 18% from here, in the next week or two, 53K. In the next 2 weeks after that, towards the end of the month, about 60K. That's what I'm really looking at.
So with the scenario on that, and of course, if you look at the 1 month on Bitcoin and kind of where it has come from, all the way down here at around 38 was really the low end, 37 on the March 7th date frame. And the climb out, because this really wasn't much of a correction though, coming from off that 47,255, and then we saw it yesterday bumping down to 44.5, which was kind of, I think, again, a lot of this FUD European scenario comes into play. You've got some regulatory pressures in from the SEC, scenarios like that. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think that had much to do with this. What are your thoughts on what could cause these kind of is it just a whale out there saying, hey, we need to take a little profit?
I think there's a lot of traders, people who got in, around 40K, they made a nice buck. They want to take, some people are going to take profits eventually. And also, I mean, you don't want something to just go straight up.
Sure.
When it goes straight up, that's when it just comes right back down usually. You want healthy corrections on the way up. Also, the stock market went way up. It's correcting, looks like a healthy correction as well. So I think it's good. It's good.
So it doesn't seem as though Bitcoin has been tracking on the S&P, because Bitcoin was still edging up while the S&P was having a little bit of struggle last week. And of course, even this week, as we've seen, Bitcoin kind of be moving up all the routes. So it's going to be interesting to see how these fly out. The question I have is, as we see these kinds of corrections, will the altcoins stay with this? Because we've got Solana that's been moving very strongly. You've got Cardano that's also had a big, strong move in the last 2 weeks. What are your thoughts on, let's take a look at Cardano and see where it's going.
Yeah, there's some really bullish things at Cardano. So, I mean, obviously in an environment like this, usually the altcoins, they come up with Bitcoin. They also have corrections with it. They're more volatile versions of it. When Bitcoin stays more sideways, they can definitely pump, as what we've seen in the past week about. If you look at your weekly on Market Cipher, we got a very strong buy signal. If you zoom out here, this is actually the first time this has happened, at least since our data has, since 2018. I believe that's when Cardano first came out, and very strong buy signal. The last time we were in the red here, you could see we were in the red. These are usually strong places to look to get in. We're in the red on Market Cipher. Last time this happened, I mean, it's going to be a crazy number. It's not going to pump up, 6,000%, but maybe in terms of a bull market high, it could pump up about a 6x, a tenth of that, and that would bring you up to, what's 600% from where we are right now? About $8 a bull market high, possibly. Not saying this is going to happen, but I think there's a good shot we can make new all-time highs at $4 or $5 in the next few months in the most bullish of scenarios.
Yeah, and Cardano's been doing some interesting things. Is when we look at the CPI, just the way, and just so you guys understand, when we've recently kind of been amping up the number of tokens that we track on the CPI. So now we're doing 15 of the top cryptos. The ones that I would look at, again, if you guys are not familiar with the CPI, it's our crypto power index. Basically, the way we look at this is we track down sentiment and a measurement called amplification, which looks at leading indicators around how people are talking about a particular trade, whether they like a token, whether it's a big fan base or a large community that's starting to cause that kind of price action. That's essentially kind of the thing that we really kind of hang our hat on. But if you look at Cardano, and I just want to jump to this because this is in our top crypto group. Let me zoom up on that one. Cardano has been in a very interesting place. So right here on amplification, this skyrocketed over the last week from a 71 and a 70, where it pumped up to 73. It's softened slightly, but if you look at overall sentiment, not necessarily down that much from early, or actually late last week, 72 right before. So could this be right there at that dip? Typically what happens when we see a market crash is usually we'll see at least a 2 to 3 point move.
Right.
And that's when I'm really concerned. When I only see like a 1 point move on any one of these major projects, I'm just like, hey, this is a normal either sideways or it's prepping for a little bit of action on there. Monday is our next data drop on this, so this will be very interesting. We may actually run some numbers over the weekend and take a look at Cardano and Solana. Solana is the other one that is kind of interesting. What are your charts showing there?
So Solana looks pretty good too. If you look at Solana, it looks kind of almost like a repeat. I mean, these are going to give you really crazy predictions, but I mean, look at the money flow. It was like this in January of 2021 before we had a giant rally. Let's see how much we came up from here for all-time high. Okay, 23,000%. That's not going to happen, but you could definitely come up to new all-time highs in the next few months from this. You could come up to these fib levels up here. I mean, what's our
all-time high on this was 258.
258. So you could come up to 300, I would say. 325 is a big fib level in most bullish of circumstances next few months. Come up to 400 possibly. And I mean, look at your daily too on Solana. Look, you're curving back into the green right here. When we curved from the green to the red, you came down from this point. So this would, if you kind of guesstimate, map this out, if we continue into the green here, and kind of like this, you would come back up to this general area, maybe even more around all-time highs by mid-May. So that's a really good projection if you don't come even farther.
Yeah, so as far as a hold strategy, I think if you are in Solana, maybe you're in where it is. Hopefully you got in down here where it has readjusted since its all-time high. For those of you maybe didn't get a chance to get out in the all-time high, at least there's some light at the end of the tunnel there for you guys. But for those of you that, I was looking at the just the 1 month on how quickly this has readjusted from $81 mid-March to where we're trading right now on Solana at $1.32. So literally within striking distance of a 2x inside a 30-day window here. So interesting stuff. And of course, Solana has their hackathon here in Miami coming up here on Bitcoin, the Bitcoin conference. There's a lot happening here in Miami for sure. We've got the NFT conference. There's the Solana hackathon. Obviously, we've got Bitcoin Miami, and then we also have the Zilliqa event on Saturday night. So there's many things happening right now that could potentially move the markets a little bit, because you've got pretty much the epicenter of the crypto universe all converging on Miami right now. What happens if a major country steps in, like El Salvador did last year, and says, "Hey, listen, we're going to legalize Bitcoin"?
It could help it. I definitely think the obvious. It could help it. It could help this rally. I think even if that doesn't happen, I think there's still, based on the technicals, based on inflation, everything that's happening, I think we're still going to go up.
Yeah.
Despite, it would probably take some major bad news to really bring us down.
For sure. The other good news for this, to me, is this little move right here. U.S. is adding what is, if I can get that to stop doing that. There you go. Nears pre-pandemic level. This, of course, is a big move in the overall job numbers, which has been 431,000 jobs in March, as unemployment rate now is nearing pre-pandemic level. Again, this is the concern that I've had for quite some time, is when we started to see the Fed reposition. If you think about the strategic things that has happened over the last 90 days, the Fed announced that we were going to see interest rates rise. We did see the quarter point basis points move. But then, of course, we had the conflict in Ukraine. So that started to reassess how the Fed was going to strategically do this throughout the year. Obviously, that also pushes into a little bit of a trickle-down effect into the global economy, especially from oil, some of the commodities like wheat, things of that nature. So you kind of looked at this and said, wait a minute, there's a lot of pressures coming from global economic. You've got finance pressures from interest rate potential hikes. And if we don't recorrect on the job side of things, we could see some things that really could push us into a potential recession. This is the first thing that I look at that usually fends off a recession, and that is jobs. With 431,000 jobs in March, this is a big jump, which I think could be a bullish signal as we lead into summer months for things like Bitcoin and just in general investments, because people are going to have more money to.
I was pleasantly surprised. That's what I will say.
Yeah, it's a big move. Unemployment rate declined 2% in March, and then the number of unemployed was 318,000 to 6 million. That was big. And then the labor market's still scrambling with labor shortages. All that was really kind of, I looked at this as leaning into our job problem here in the U.S. of continuing. And of course, if we see another growth number next month on jobs, this really could be that swooping effect of a nice, really kind of bouncing off the economy without going into recession. Yep. All right, so Evan, you're liking Bitcoin into the summer. When you see, because I hear this term a lot, sell in May, go away. And May seems to be, and of course, we know what happened last May.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll be in a position where we'll kind of sidestep that situation this month or this May versus what we saw last May?
I will say that it may not be May, may not be June. It depends where we are in May. If Bitcoin's at 80 grand in May, I would say that's a good place to definitely take some profits. Because it just doesn't fly under the radar like it used to.
Exactly.
I mean, as soon as we make new all-time highs, this is going to be front page CNBC. Everywhere is going to be talking about it, which is kind of one of the reasons, and people using so much leverage now, one of the reasons why we have these 50% corrections.
Well, the euphoria sets in.
Yeah. In this market. But I think we could go to 80K and then correct another 50% and just repeat the pattern and go back to 40K. And then finally, in the end of the year, maybe early 2023, go over 100K, the 100K that everybody's been looking for.
Yeah, the traders are loving this. They have to be.
Yeah.
This is like trader Super Bowl time.
Oh yeah, it's been a fun few weeks for me.
Yeah. All right, so if you're looking at a short-term trade right now, Evan, is this the time to do it?
So right now on Bitcoin, there was a trade I actually took a little while ago. It actually hit its first take profit right here. So I went in. This is just a simple kind of market cipher strategy. Look at the curvature on your 15-minute right here with the little trigger wave. I went in right around where we crossed into the green right here, and I'll take out my long position tool, and I went in right here. And I set my first take profit right around where we are right now. It just hit that first take profit. You see there's a little bit of resistance right there. And then to have a good risk ratio reward, I set my stop loss right around here, about 2% and 2% upward. So I'm going to take about, 25, 30% out on this first take profit. And then the next take profit would probably be somewhere up here, I would say. And then third area to look to take profit up here. If you want to try to get in, there's one, with trading, you're never going to be right 100% of the time, but there's ways to be right more often than not. 30-minute money flow crossover is a really good place to look. I would be looking at my 30-minute money flow crossover, maybe my 24-minute money flow crossover to potentially get in. Or I would be looking at my 4-hour, see this green dot, it confirms in about 42 minutes. That may be a good place to get in as well. So yeah.
That would be I think that'd be a nice weekend trade too, if you were looking at doing a little
Possibly,
swing.
yeah. Weekends could be a little bit more riskier for trading, but yeah.
Interesting stuff. All right, you guys, of course, tuned in over on the podcast right now. Make sure, by the way, if you have not checked out Evan's courses, he's got a great course on market cipher trading. And even if you're looking at maybe just understanding the trades, click the link below. We've left a link down there for Evan's courses for you guys to get to those. And Market Cipher is a great tool. It's one that we have used. I still use it all the time. And whether you've got into that level of trading, if you haven't, get Evan's course. It'll help you guide your way through it. And of course, that's the best thing to do in terms of understanding how to do these kinds of trades in the future. If you're over on the podcast right now, make sure and tune in over here on the YouTube channel. This is where you get a chance to see these charts, how we're running these when we do the TA analysis with Evan. And of course, it's also the place where you can sign up for the Diamond Circle, get into our list, and it gives you guys a couple of emails and some new data points that we're dropping on an ongoing basis back into our member group. So again, that's the best way to find me. It's out on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.